Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. I'm continuing my conversation with Dr. John Lott. He's with crimeresearch.org. He is considered one of the country's leading authorities on gun control issues and on crime-related issues. Delighted again to have you on the show, Dr. Lott.
Well, thank you.
Hey, let's talk a little bit about Texas. Of course, the Texas legislature, very busy, created a lot of reforms, some of which were very good, particularly, I think, in the gun-related arena. Some of them horrific in other areas that I'll probably reserve for another conversation. But I've written about them over at Huffington Post, in fact. But talk to me a little bit about where Texas was, where Texas is, and what do you think about the situation here?
Well, Texas had some significant improvements in their concealed carry laws that just happened this weekend. I think it's one of the major changes in the country. They've joined 12 other states in allowing people to be able to carry permanent concealed handguns on university property. And look, I mean, you look at these mass public shootings in the United States, and at least since 1950, with just two exceptions, every single one of the mass public shootings in the United States has taken place where guns are banned. And as we were just talking about, there's a real reason for that killers seek out areas where victims aren't able to defend themselves. I mean, you can just look at some of the attacks from last year, the Santa Barbara killer. If you ever read his manifesto that's there, he's very explicit in explaining why he picked the target that he did. He had considered other targets, but he would discard them when he would talk about the fact that there are people there that were armed that might be able to stop him before he was going to be able to go and start to kill the students that were there. Or you look at the mass public shooter in New Brunswick last summer. He had pictures on his Facebook page of mass public shooters in gun-free zones, this isn't random. At some point, when you see attack after attack after attack keep on occurring, where victims aren't able to go and defend themselves, you realize that this, there has to be something there, and so Texas, as I say, is joining other states in being able to let people carry. Now, there's still going to be some restrictions. Universities are going to be able to go and pick what parts of the schools people are going to be allowed to carry or not. But at least this is a step forward, and at least people will begin to see that some of the fears that have been put forward by McRaven and other university officials were not well-founded.
Yeah. You indicated that you're not a big fan of doing the kind of comparative analysis that I did in the last segment between Chicago and Houston. How do you quantify what works and what doesn't work? And I agree with you, by the way. I believe societal and cultural factors play a big role. I practically grew up in England over the years with my mom being from there. And it's a different place. It's an incredibly different place on so many different levels. But talk a little bit about how you quantify your case.
Well, what you want to do is you want to look at before and after a change occurred. So let's take something like the death penalty. About a decade ago, the New York Times had done analysis where they said, look, the murder rates were actually higher in states with the death penalty than states without the death penalty. And, of course, being the New York Times, they then say, well, that proves that the death penalty doesn't have any beneficial impact on murder rates. And that's simply a bizarre comparison. The issue is that the states with the highest murder rates were the ones that had adopted the death penalty. And it's possible the death penalty caused the murder rates to fall, but by not enough to be as low as the low murder rate states that never felt the need to go and adopt the death penalty to begin with. What you need to do there in that case, if you're going to analyze it, is to see how the murder rate changes in states that adopt it before and after the death penalty rule is put into effect, and then to see how that change compares to other states that didn't change their rules over the same period of time. Did the states that enacted the death penalty have a drop in murder rates relative to the states that didn't change their rules, and hopefully you're accounting for other factors that can affect crime, such as changes in law enforcement, arrest rates, conviction rates, prison sentence lengths, and many other factors that can affect crime rates. But that's the way you do it. It's called basically a panel data approach, where you're following many different jurisdictions over time. And one of the benefits of living in the United States, most of the empirical work that's done by academics any place in the world is done using U.S. data. And the reason is you have 51 different laboratories that are there. It could be that when they enacted the death penalty, they also gave more money to prosecutors. When they did it, maybe they changed other rules at the same time. And the way you can begin to disentangle that, if you have enough states changing their rules in enough different years, you can hopefully begin to disentangle the different effects that things have, if you have enough experiments.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about, you said that Texas made progress. How does Texas compare to other states? I know it's better, but how many other states would you say have better gun law environments? Obviously, Alaska probably has among the best.
Right.
But who else? Talk a little bit about that.
Right. Well, Texas, up until fairly recently, has had one of the most restrictive concealed carry laws in the country. You go back a few years ago, there were about 450,000, 500,000 concealed carry permit holders. But one of the main reasons for that is that you had a 10-hour training requirement and another 10-hour training requirement to renew your permit. Plus it costs, and it still does, $140 to go and get your concealed carry permit. That's much stricter than most of the country. Average fee across the country is about $56. And about a quarter of the states don't require any training. Another third or so of the states require 3 to 5 hours of training before one gets a permit. So Texas had about a quarter of the rate of concealed carry permits being issued as Pennsylvania per capita. And the reason wasn't that Pennsylvanians disliked concealed carry laws more than Texans did. It's just that it was a lot more costly, a lot more difficult to go and get a concealed carry permit in Texas than Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, it cost $20 to get a permit, and there was no training requirement that was there. And when they reduced the training requirement from 10 to 5 hours, you've seen the number of concealed carry permits go from about 500,000 to about 850,000. And that's basically the pattern that you see in other countries. States. You make it more difficult, people get fewer permits. And it also changes the mix. When you have a $140 fee, it's basically poor people in high-crime urban areas who can't afford that fee and are less likely to go and get permits. And my research indicates that those people are the ones that need permits for protection the most. People are most likely to be victims of violent crime, benefit the most from having the option to go and get a permit. Now, Texas fees are nowhere near the worst. You look at some state like Illinois, to go through the process to get a concealed carry permit, it costs well over $600 to go through the process. There you're going to see very few people who really need it are going to be getting the permit. And the problem is that not only don't you see the same reduction in crime from a law like that because few people go and get permits, and so the risk for criminals committing a crime is relatively low, but you also see, as I say, there's a change in the mix. The people who are most likely to be victims of violent crime are the ones who are priced out of being able to go and get a permit.
All right, John Lott, great guest. Dr. Lott, he's an economist and a world-recognized authority on guns and crime. Make sure you learn more about him by going to crimeresearch.org. Thanks, John. Good talking to you again.
Thank you very much. When
we come back, much more for you. I do want to remind you, best content here, including this interview, can be found over there at usdailyreview.com. More after this.